Skritches Creek. The first time I saw Ketchum Skritch, I was about 12 and spending the day with the old woodsman Rancid Crabtree. Ketchum came driving up in an ancient rickety truck that seemed to be puffing smoke from every orifice and portal. He was about as tall a human being as I had ever seen, hard and sinewy, with a week's growth of gray beard and coal black eyes glinting out of cavernous sockets. And there was a meanness to him. Not the happy meanness of some people I knew, but a serious, no-nonsense meanness. In the truck with him was a little girl with wild, tawny hair and great, wide blue eyes. She held a dog by the collar. The dog curled a lip at me and growled. Ketchum Skritch told the dog to shut up, and the dog did. I thought probably Skritch could tell just about anything to shut up, and it would. He got out of the truck and walked toward us carrying a gallon jug. "Skritch," Rancid said. "Crabtree," Skritch said. Those were about the only two words exchanged between them. Rancid gave Skritch a wad of crumpled-up dollar bills and took the jug. Skritch got back in the truck and drove off in a cloud of smoke. I could see the little girl looking back out of the rear window of the truck. After they had gone, I said to Rancid, "How come they call him Ketchum?" "Well, it might be on account he come from Ketchum, Idaho. But I reckon it's 'cause if anybody does him a mean turn and tries to get away, he'll catch 'em. I recollect years ago there was a fella by the name of Ringo Dance who beat Skritch out of some money. The way I heard the story, Skritch caught up with him in a saloon in a little town up north. Ringo was standing at the bar with some other men when Skritch stepped through the door and called out his name, mean and hard-like. "Dance!" Ringo jumped right through a window, and the other fellows, they took one look at Skritch and broke into a foxtrot. I guess they didn't know Ringo's last name was Dance. I, for one, certainly did not want to be caught by Ketchum Skritch, whether or not I had done him a bad turn. Little did I know then what lay in store for me a few years hence. "What's in the jug?" I asked Rancid. Some medicine old Skritch whups up for me from time to time." "Medicine? Why, you're never sick, Rancid." "Well, that just goes to show what fine medicine it is," Rancid said, and he pulled the cork and took a dose of it. Then he gasped and wheezed and pounded himself on the chest. But not only that, it's good for tanning hides and curing fence posts. The next time I saw Ketchum Skritch was a couple of years later. My friend Wretch and I had hitchhiked back into the mountains with a couple of loggers to do some fishing. As we rounded a curve, the mountains opened up into a pretty little valley with a stream flowing through it. "Hey, this looks like a good place," Wretch told the loggers. "Just drop us off here and we'll spend the day fishing that stream." "You sure you want to fish there?" the driver said. "Why not?" I asked. "You think it's fished out?" "No," the other logger said. "I can almost guarantee it ain't been fished at all." I caught him sneaking a wink at the driver. "Oh, then this is the place for us," Wretch said. "We'd appreciate it if you'd pick us up on your way back tonight." "Sure thing," the man who had winked said. "Leastwise, we'll pick up as much as we can." Then the two loggers laughed for all they were worth. Looking back, I now realize that they were two of the happy, mean type of people. The fishing in that little stream was as fine as any I'd ever had. After we saw that we wouldn't have any trouble catching our limits, we dumped out our worm cans and started practicing our fly fishing. It was beautiful the way those fat little cutthroat would tear into our black gnats, and every once in a while we would nail a 12 or a 14-incher, and once this huge red belly flashed out from under a log and snapped my leader as if it were a cobweb. I told myself I'd have to come back and try for that fish again. It was one of those fish that swim forever in the dark currents of your mind until you catch them. Then you eat them and forget them. After Wretch and I each had a good string of fish, we stashed them in our fishing rods and went exploring. We walked down the middle of the creek singing and whistling and philosophizing, enjoying the cool, clinging wetness on our legs, the hot sun toasting our backs, and the creek itself, dappled with golden light beneath a veil of alder leaves. It was wonderful. Then I happened to notice a shed off to one side, almost concealed by honeysuckle. "Why, look there," I said to Wretch. "Somebody has built himself a little cabin." "I'll be danged," Wretch said. "Maybe it was built by an old prospector, and he got froze to death or something and left some gold nuggets laying around. Let's go take a look." As we scrambled out of the creek and started up the bank to the shed, a voice boomed, "Whoa there!" We both whoaed. It was the sort of voice that if it had said "dance," you instantly would have broken into a foxtrot. I looked around, and there stood Ketchum Skritch. "What in tarnation you think you doing?" While I was still sorting through my hoard of lies for a good one, Wretch stammered out, "Why, we're lost. Yes, sir, we're lost." Yeah, I said, picking up the cue. But before I could embroider the lie with some colorful and authentic details, Ketchum snatched Wretch up by the shirt and held him straight out at arm's length. Wretch's feet ran furiously in empty space. "I don't know whether to skin you now or wait until the next time I catch you snooping around my property," Skritch said, looking as if he favored now. Next time would suit me better," Wretch whined, "'cause there ain't gonna be no next time." Then Skritch dropped him. Wretch's feet being already revved up, he spun a couple of shallow furrows in the sod and then shot off through the brush across the creek and up the side of a mountain before I had even jammed myself into first gear. Skritch looked down at me. "I seen your skinny carcass somewheres before," he said. "When I caught those poor fellas in here last year, you ain't by any chance the lucky one what got away, are you?" No, sir," I said. "This is my first time, and I was just passing through trying to find my way home." "Well, then I want you to do just two things. The first is to pick up them fish you stashed in the creek." "Yes, sir. And what's the other?" "T'other is get." After picking up the strings of fish, I set what might well have been the world's record for getting. Wretch and I were so scared that it was at least a week before we even thought about going back to fish Skritches Creek. It seemed such a shame, all those fine, fat cutthroat going to waste. We began to speculate that maybe old Skritch was more bark than bite, and decided to ask Rancid Crabtree his opinion. "What age you be now?" Rancid asked. 14. "Well, then I wouldn't try fishing that creek again, 'cause Skritch considers anybody over 12 a keeper." "What's he use that old shed for anyway?" I expect that's where he keeps the ones he don't throw back. You boys best steer clear of Skritch." We didn't talk about fishing Skritches Creek anymore, but I couldn't get the thought of that huge, magical cutthroat out of my mind, the one that had snapped my leader. Several times in moments of fish madness I nearly sneaked back there, but the image of Ketchum holding Wretch in the air at arm's length would shock me back to sanity. I was left with only my memory of that fine morning on Skritches Creek and a gnawing in my belly to fish it again. A couple years passed, and I became almost as interested in girls as I was in fish. One Saturday, Wretch somehow managed to borrow his father's car, and he, Bertie Thompson, and I drove out to a little country school to a dance. Usually we went just to watch the Saturday night fight, in which a couple of the seedier characters at the dance would shuffle around each other in the parking lot, saying things like, "So you think you can take me, huh? I don't think I know. You and who else? I can take you with one hand tied behind me. Yeah, yeah," and so on. They would shuffle around each other, repeating these phrases for half an hour or so, hoping someone would jump in and say, "Okay, break it up, you guys." If no one said, "Okay, break it up, you guys," then sooner or later they would have to roll around in the gravel of the parking lot for a while to satisfy the spectators who had stood around listening to all the boring chit-chat. But this Saturday night our plan was different. The idea, as I understood it, was to meet some girls and see if they wouldn't let us take them home. I was a little nervous about the venture because I didn't know that much about girls, and the very thought of actually taking home filled me with a secret dread. The dread was secret because I had somehow managed to give the impression to the other guys, I don't know how, that I was an experienced ladies' man. "Oh, boy," Bertie said when we drove up to the school. "I got a feeling we're going to get lucky tonight." "Oh, boy," I said, wiping my palms on my good pants. It turned out to be a pretty nice dance. Rancid Crabtree was there, whooping it up with his girlfriend, Ginger Ann. I danced a couple of dances with Ginger Ann just to get loosened up a bit. She was soft and warm to the touch and smelled nice, too. And pretty soon I was wondering if Rancid would mind if I took Ginger Ann home just for practice. "You got a ride home tonight, Ginger Ann?" I ventured. "You bet I have, sweetie," she said. "Now why don't you go dance with that pretty little girl over there? Maybe she don't have a ride home." Why, my eyeballs almost suffered cardiac arrest. Standing against the wall was about the cutest girl I'd ever seen, her tawny hair framing her big blue eyes, perky nose, and sullen mouth. I sauntered over to her. "Hi, my name is Patrick." "So?" I was wondering if you had a name." "Sure I have a name. Pearlie." "Oh, well, Pearlie. Pearlie, would you go home with me? I mean, would you like to dance?" Pearlie practically leaped at the invitation. "Oh, I guess so," she said. My suavity had paid off. I danced the next 2 dances with her, being very cool and sophisticated, so she would know I was a man of the world. Every time I tried to ask her if she had a ride home, though, the words didn't come out right. I said to her suavely, "You must be getting very warm from all this dancing. You're sweating like a pig, you know. Do you have, would you like, some of that nice cool lemonade over there?" "I sure would," she said. "I'd like to soak my sore feet in it." Pearlie may have been cute, but she had a bit of a mean streak, too. As I was handing her a glass of lemonade is when the terrible misunderstanding occurred. Someone bumped me hard from behind, and I dumped the lemonade right down the front of Pearlie's dress. Well, I was embarrassed and angry, and assumed the bump had been deliberate, a little practical joke perpetrated by either Wretch or Bertie. "Watch it, you moron!" I snapped, "or I'll—" "You and who else?" Recognizing fighting words when I heard them, I slowly turned around. There stood a menacing mountain of bone and muscle that appeared to be, if not the missing link in the chain of human evolution, at least a misplaced one. He was a head taller than I and had real biceps, which looked like turtles doing push-ups in his shirt sleeves. "I want to go home," Pearlie said, speaking my exact thought. "Don't you want to stay for the fight?" the lynx said to her.
"What fight?"
I asked. The one between me and you, the lynx said, thumping my chest with a finger the size of a cucumber.
"Now let's go out to the parking lot."
Of all the possible destinations under my feverish consideration, the parking lot held such a low priority it didn't even register on the scale. But by now some interested spectators had gathered around us and were offering words of encouragement to both sides. With an audience looking on, I didn't feel I could resort to defensive groveling without at least going through the traditional fight ritual.
"So, you think you can take me, huh?"
This utterance so delighted and surprised my adversary that he burst out in a harsh laugh.
Yeah, I do." "You and who else?"
Then I heard Birdie's voice whispering urgently in my ear. I hoped he had some plan for escape. "You know your new fly rod? I was wondering if, after the fight, I could—" Suddenly, Rancid Crabtree was standing between Missing Link and me, shoving us apart. Wow, I thought that was close. Now Rancid will say, "All right, you guys, break it up."
"All right, folks. I'm here to tell you this ain't gonna be no bloody spectacle put on for your amusement. You all just go about your dancing, let these fellas go out to the parking lot and settle their differences man to man in private. I'll go along just to make sure it's a fair fight."
What? Is he stark, raving mad? This guy is going to kill me. Rancid's little speech resulted in a good deal of disappointment, most of it apparently mine. Everyone else seemed to prefer dancing a polka to watching a poking. The last thing I wanted was a fight, fair or unfair, making so little difference as to be inconsequential, because in either case I was going to get murdered. The three of us walked out to the parking lot, the link rolling up his sleeves over his bulging biceps. I rolled up my shirt sleeves over where my biceps were supposed to be but hadn't yet put in an appearance. If they were ever going to show up, now was a good time. "First thing," Rancid said, "I don't want to see no eye gouging or ear biting or putting the boots to a fellow while he's down. Of course it's okay while he's still standing up." The link sneered, an expression I took as a clear indication he did not hold such sissy rules in high regard. "Now I'm going to give each you fellows a little tip about fighting," Rancid went on, "since I've had considerable experience with it in my day. But I better whisper it in your ears so t'other fella can't hear it. You first," he said to the link.
"I don't need no tip about fighting,"
the link said. I believed him. "You get it anyway," Rancid said, "because otherwise you just might end up beaten into a little pulpy mess that would make people sick to their stomachs just to look at you, and somehow folks might think I was to blame. Now you don't want that, do you, Harry?" Harry, I thought. Rancid must know the link. Rancid put his arm around where Harry's neck would have been if he'd had one, and started whispering. I could tell it must be very valuable information because of the startled look on the link's face. All the time he was whispering, Rancid kept smiling and hugging Harry's head, which caused Harry to wince, and every once in a while they would look over at me, and the link would kind of shake his head in a little jerky motion. I was beginning to wonder if Rancid was giving my opponent a tip or a 5-minute lecture in mayhem. Then a strange thing happened. Harry tore his head loose from Rancid's hug, scurried across the parking lot, leaped in his car or somebody's car, and roared off down the road, spraying gravel over half the school playground. Rancid stood there in the parking lot, hands on his hips, rocking back and forth on the balls of his feet, smiling his big snaggletooth smile and staring after the rapidly diminishing taillights. "Shoot," he said, "I guess that fella just remembered some business he had back in town. There won't be no fight after all." I let out the breath I had caught when the link had first thumped my puny chest. "What about my tip?" I said. Rancid looked puzzled for an instant. "Oh, that," he said. "I don't reckon you'll be needing your tip." When Rancid and I walked back into the dance, a murmur of amazement drifted around the room. Rancid patted me on the back and turned to a group of men standing by the door. I've never seen nothing like it," he told them. "Boy, it's like a gall-dang pile driver. You'd never guess it. Looking at them puny arms of his, would you? I bet old Harry don't stop running till sunup tomorrow." The men all grinned, looking at my puny arms. Wretch and Birdie came over to congratulate me and said they knew I could hold my own with a link. "Yeah, and I was just fooling when I asked about your fly rod," Birdie said. "I figured all along you could lick him. How come do you suppose Rancid wouldn't let anybody watch?" "Well, I don't know," I said. "It was pretty violent. I hope I didn't get blood spattered all over my good pants." Suddenly, Pearlie was standing in front of me. "You know what you went and done?" she said, her blue eyes flashing. "First you dumped lemonade all over my dress, and now you beat up my ride home." "The link was your ride home?" "He's my cousin is all. Harry Pitts." "Sorry," I said. "I didn't know." "Well, now you're just going to have to take me home yourself." "Hoo boy," Birdie said, poking me in the ribs. "Hoo boy is right," Wretch said, slapping me on the back. "I'll even loan you my old man's car. Don't mess it all up either." "Hoo boy," I said, my voice hardly cracking at all. This was not my night. To tell the truth, taking home wasn't what it had been cracked up to be. Pearlie sat hunched against the door on her side of the seat and devoted most of her attention to chewing a hangnail, the world's largest hangnail. Occasionally she would snap directions at me, but that was about all the conversation I could get out of her. "Turn there. Take a left at the crossroads. Go through that gate." After half an hour, it occurred to me that we were getting pretty far into the mountains, and I was beginning to wonder if I could find my way back again. The road deteriorated into an overgrown pack trail, and I was tearing up brush and small trees with the bumper of Wretch's old man's car. "Holy cow," I said finally. "How much farther is it, anyway?" "Drive through that crick, smarty," Pearlie snapped, "and we'll be nearly there." I imagined the look on Wretch's old man's face if he could see me driving his car through a creek. It was pretty terrible. A frightening thought suddenly hit me. Suppose Harry Pitts was at Pearlie's house. Either I spoke the thought aloud or Pearlie read my mind. "No, Harry won't be there," she said. "It's my grandpa's place. I'm staying with him for the summer." We drove into a clearing, at the far edge of which was a huge old log house. There was something about the place that caused the hair on the back of my neck to lift. This your Grandpa Pitt's place?" I asked. "Naw," she said. "This here belongs to Grandpa Skritch." "Grandpa Skritch? Skritch? Skritch?" As I simultaneously gunned the engine and attempted to push Pearlie out the door, a great mean voice roared out, "Whoa there!" I had no trouble recognizing the voice. I stalled the engine just as Skritch himself stepped into the headlight beams. "Now you're going to get it, I bet," Pearlie said in her mean, squeaky little voice.
"Step out of that car, boy," Skritch ordered. "What you doing with Pearlie? Get on up the house there so I can get a better look at you."
It soon became apparent that Harry had sneaked Pearlie off to the dance without telling Grandpa Skritch. By the time we got to the house, she was crying and saying that everything that had happened was my fault. I did not anticipate that the next few moments would be among my happier ones. I did not even anticipate there would be many next few moments. If Skritch had threatened to skin me over a few fish, what would he do to me for kidnapping his granddaughter? Worse yet, for taking her home. Skritch turned up the lantern on the table and glared at me.
Now, what's this all about?
He said. I explained.
He whupped Harry, Pearlie blurted out. And afterwards, Harry run off and left me at the dance.
Whupped Harry? Skritch boomed. No.
Yes, whimpered Pearlie.
Good gosh almighty!
Skritch bellowed and brought his fist down so hard on the table the lantern flew up in the air almost as high as I did. Sir, I said, there may be some misunderstanding about that. But it was too late. Skritch stepped around the table and came for me. I backed against the stove and shut my eyes. And then Skritch had me by the hand, crunching all my finger and knuckle bones into little splinters, and I suppose that he would then move on and do the same to the other parts of my body, one piece at a time. But then I realized he was pumping the remains of my hand up and down. He was shaking my hand and laughing. I had never in my life heard even a rumor of someone's having seen Skritch laugh. Pearlie seemed amazed, too, and, if I wasn't mistaken, disappointed.
Laddie, he said after a bit, still squeezing the remains of my hand, anybody who whups at no-good Harry Pitts is a friend of mine. If you can see your way clear, I'd like for you to whup his daddy, too. Yeah, from now on, laddie, you can count yourself my friend. And old Skritch don't have many friends.
Well, that's hard to believe, sir, I said.
It's true, and that's the way I like it.
I thought it might not be too easy being Ketchum Skritch's friend, but it was a darn sight more pleasant than being his enemy. After he had finished squeezing my hand, he poured Pearlie and me each a glass of buttermilk and set out a plate of dry biscuits. I formerly had loathed buttermilk, but now found it to be far and away my favorite beverage. The dry biscuits tasted more delicious than the finest chocolate cake I'd ever eaten. Thus does a near brush with death heighten one's appreciation of the humbler things of life. Skritch sat across the table from me, staring at my puny arms.
So you whupped Harry, he said. Well, I'll be danged.
I guess I better be going, I said. There are a couple of other fellows at the dance who might be needing the car.
I like you. I don't know why, but I do. If you want to take Pearlie out again sometimes, it's all right with me.
I looked at Pearlie. She stuck out her tongue. Well, thanks anyway, I said, but I'm more used to older ladies.
I can understand that, Skritch said. Anyway, if there's anything I can do for you...
I stopped. My trembling, mangled hand rested on the doorknob. There might be something, I said. For many years afterwards, up until the time old Ketchum Skritch died, whenever I felt the urge to catch a mess of cutthroat trout, I had my own secret place, a mountain stream where golden light dappled the water beneath a fluttering veil of alder leaves. I never saw either Pearlie or Harry Pitts again, and as far as I was concerned, that was much too soon.